Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about Exo-Sisters, one of the newer decks I've started picking up here, and to be honest it has been amazing with the amount of graveyard hit and really powerful cards you can play as one-ofs. It really is fantastic. The new support that they got in the form of Marfa as well as a new boss monster means that not only is the deck significantly more consistent, it was sort of mid before because it didn't really have a way to extend properly. Marfa is absolutely busted and is just the support this deck needed, and Magnifica adds another sort of layer to the end board power. So basically the way this deck works, you're going to be utilizing your whole deck just to try and get hold of Marfa. Marfa plus any other Exo-Sister is basically full combo, and what that full combo results in is Exo-Sister Magnifica as well as your Exo-Sister Returnia on the field, which is a very simple board, but it's also extremely powerful. The way it works is that board will allow you to banish 4 cards during your opponent's turn. Magnifica has a quick play banish built into her effect, detach 1, banish a card, pretty straightforward. Then it has a second effect where it can tag itself out to summon out one of its materials. Now its materials are 2 rank 4 Exo-Sisters, which is really easy to do with Marfa and any other Exo. One of the materials underneath it is going to be Michalis. Michalis, on the turn it's summoned, if it has an Exo-Sister material, also gets a quick play banish, so there's 2. Then you've got Returnia. Returnia will allow you to banish a card your opponent controls, and then if you happen to have Exceed summoned that turn, you get to banish another card. If you haven't Exceed summoned that turn, you can instead choose to Exceed summon as a quick play effect, which is also kind of cool. It comes up on occasion. Returnia definitely extremely powerful, so there's banishing 4 cards off of just 2 cards in your hand. That's to say nothing of the amount of hand traps that you're playing, of being able to play things like the Mention Shifter in your deck, which is absolutely brutal. So we're going to go over the actual deck list at the end of the video, so stick around for that, and we are going to play some gameplay here of different sort of games, game plans, and showing off how the deck actually works. A lot of people are playing to counter Exo-Sisters whenever they sort of see the matchup. There are definitely ways to counter it, and we're trying to counter the counters with things like Gamma. I typically don't play Gamma, but I feel like it's almost necessary in this deck. But there are definitely counterplays, and we're going to be trying to play around our opponent's counterplay, but this deck is still amazingly powerful. Really good use of a lot of different consistency cards as well. You're basically running, what, 9 copies of Marfa, which is absolutely phenomenal. We are going to be doing a deck list at the end, so if you're interested in content like this, be them deck profiles, be it live gameplay, be it replays, whatever it is you want to do, feel free to subscribe, stick around, and like the video if you happen to see what you're seeing. And let's get in. That didn't make any sense, but anyway, let's get into game number 1. Already getting into game 1 here. This is just an excellent hand here. Basically, anytime you see Marfa plus any other Exo-Sister, you're absolutely loving it. However, Marfa is somewhat vulnerable to Ash Blossom. That's why we run things like Gamma. So on this occasion, this is going to be one of those examples where I said your opponent's going to be trying to play around you a solid amount. We are going to go into Michalis here. Michalis is going to grab us an Exo-Sister spell or trap card from deck. We're going to grab Returnia. We're going to rely on our Returnia and our Vadis here, and we're going to see what our opponent can do. So we're not in a terrible position here. Our opponent's going to normal summon Diameter going into Lingaribo. Lingaribo, of course, being a little bit of a problem. We're going to try and get him to use his effect preemptively here off of our Vadis. Vadis then summoning out Marfa as well as Ellis from our deck. He's going to summon out his Parallel Exceed. That is just fine by me. We are going to Veiler it because we have the Veiler. We might as well use it. He's neither going to go for Call by the Grave, which is a very interesting choice. So it is. They're going to banish Effect Veiler from the graveyard in order to negate its effects, but as anyone who's read an Exo-Sister knows, the moment your opponent moves a card out of the graveyard, well, they're cooked, because all of your Exo-Sisters can quick play Exceed summon into other Exo-Sisters. So we're actually able to summon out our Michalis again, which is a quick play banish on the turn it's summoned, as well as our Cast a Spell. Cast a Spell on the turn it's summoned, neither player can summon anything from the graveyard, so that locks out our opponent's options for the grave. We're also going to quick play banish the Lingaribo. That's why we didn't hit it with a Veiler. We knew we were going to be able to do something like this. He's going to go now for the triple tactics talent. We decide we're going to flip up Returnia here, just in the off chance he decides he wants to go into anything. We're going to quickly banish both of his Parallel Exceed. He's going to draw 2 additional cards, but there was no way he was going to be able to extend nearly far enough with his entire field being banished. His Diameter was in the grave, he had already normal summoned, his Parallel Exceeds were gone, his Lingaribo was gone, he couldn't summon from the graveyards. There was just simply no way. Even if he had a top decked into Circular, how was he going to trigger its effect, right? Because he sends Sigma to Grave, summons out his Circular, and then what? He can't summon Sigma. There was simply no way. And that's another demonstration. Don't use Call by the Grave against Exo-Sisters. Just don't do it. Just don't. You're just shooting yourself in the leg. Don't do that. But anyway, really good show off here. I wanted to show it off against at least one top tier deck, even if we did open a pretty decent situation. They also did stop our Marfa, so it wasn't as if we opened broken or perfect or anything like that. But that's just a decent demonstration of their power. Let's get into replay number 2. Already getting into game number 2 here. We're up against Kame here. We're going to go Pot of Prosperity, banishing 6 to take a peek at the top of our deck. We have double Max C in hand, which isn't a fantastic situation to be in, but we are able to grab Marfa from the top of our deck. We have Marfa plus Ellis. It's full combo. We do, however, get hit with the Ash Blossom. Again, the reason I'm showing off games of this happening is because it's going to happen. People are going to Ash Blossom your Marfa. It is simply the way it is. Zorba equipping onto itself a Moon Majestus from our extra deck. Our opponent's going to go for the Max C here. Your opponent goes for Max C. Normally your best option is to sort of just hold off. Don't go too crazy. We do summon out the Marfa. We get to search our deck for his second Zoroa. But we each end our turn. We've got double Max C in hand. He's already used at least one Ash Blossom. He may not have a way to stop the Max C, and even if he does, it's more than likely going to be something like Call by the Grave, which will be not very good for him. Our Marfa can also, if he decides to move anything out of either of our graveyards, then he's basically going to be giving us a lot of advantage here because he'll allow us to summon out Michaelis. He does decide to go into the Grandmaster first before doing anything else. Grandmaster giving him the ability to search his deck for his Sword Soul card, and Mo Yi allowing him to draw one. So we are up against Sword Souls, currently tier 3, I believe, at the time of recording. So they go for their Strategist ditching one card, their Vishuda, to the grave to summon itself as well as another token. They are just letting us draw cards here. They must be pretty damn confident. They're going into the Cheng Ying. I don't know if they're trying to go for a game, but it's not going to work out for them. They are going to take us out here 27 to the face, as well as swinging over our Marfa. The Cheng Ying and the Grandmaster, both of these cards are definitely threats, but we're in a decent enough position. He goes Max C. That must have been what he was banking on. He thought, you know what, with the 2 interruptions and the Max C, it'll even out. Unfortunately, we've got that cross-out designator. He is not getting the Resolve Max C here. He could use the effect of Cheng Ying, but he decides not to, which is a smart move, of course. It would have been a bad play. We go Pax. We're going to grab Returnia from our deck here. We just wanted to see if he had anything to use. We're going to Imperm the Cheng Ying. Then we're going to use our Marfa. Marfa finally resolving, summoning out 2 Sword Souls, but they immediately get popped. So I guess this guy was just confident that we couldn't extend, but he gave us 1,000,001 cards. So unfortunately for him, we are going to extend. We normal summon our Stella to bait out the Shizao's effect, which is fine. He negates us. That is perfect. Blackout giving him another token, hoping he can stay alive. We're going to special summon out our Ellis, gaining 800 life and summoning out Michaelis. Michaelis now has the ability to banish the Grandmaster, as well as searching our deck for another spell or trap card. I believe we were running 2 of each trap at this stage. We might have been. We did end up cutting it down to 1. I may have only been playing 1 at the time as well. We've only searched for 1 of each either way. We're going to take out his token. He's got 3 cards left in hand. He's going to go Ashuna, summoning itself out to the field. We're going to use our second Maxi. If you're going to use 2, we're going to use 2. It only sounds fair to me. You're going to summon out the Ashuna here. He's going to link off into Monk of the Tinya. We're going to quickly activate our Vadis here, summoning out 2 additional monsters from our graveyard before activating Returnia. Returnia banishing the Monk, allowing us to then exceed summon into another Michaelis. So we don't get the double banish, but it essentially gives us a double banish, because now we've got Michaelis for him summoning out his second Monk, and now we've got another banish. We're just going to banish the Monk, and there's nothing left he can do. That is game over. Nothing left in hand, barring 1 card, and it very obviously wasn't any use to him. So there you go, 2 top tier matchups in a row. Mathmech and Sword Souls both getting absolutely destroyed. There was a lot of Max C floating around there on both sides. Of course, he had us on Max C as well as us hitting him. He was pretty confident that he would be able to survive off of his second Maxi in the Blackout. It ended up just not working out for him, and it just do be like that sometimes. So there you go, that's game number 2. Let's get into the third. Alright, getting into our third game here, we are going to go for packs right off the bat. We want to see if our opponent's going to play Ash Blossom. They may still do it. A lot of people will save it, but they don't have it on this occasion, so we're going to summon out Martha and Ellis. We're going to go Stella. Stella summons out Sophia. Sophia lets us draw one. Then we're going to Exceed off into Castapel. Castapel then is going to grab us from our deck another Exo-Sister monster. We're going to grab another Martha just for some follow-up. Then we're simply going to set free and pass. The reason actually we set free and pass is there were random delays happening. I was convinced my opponent had Nibiru. I decided, you know what, we're going to go to end phase. If my opponent has Nibiru, he might just activate it now, and he didn't, right? He just ended up not having Nibiru. I got psyched out, my own bad, right? So, but I did want to mention that. Our opponent's going to go Virtual World Gate. They're going to set Chuchi to their field. They're going to go for the adventure cards. They've just got the full shtick here, going for the adventure token, activating the spell card, grabbing the Griffin Rider. So our opponent basically knows, right, that if they try to move a card out of the graveyard, they are going to suffer for it. So we are sort of banking on the fact that they're not going to be able to move much out of the grave. They're going to go into the battle phase here, wiping out the two small Exo-Sisters, which is very smart. I'm absolutely with it. They're going to try and go for some of their virtual world plays. Now we decide now is the opportunity to use Vadis. Vadis is going to try and summon out two Exo-Sisters to the field. Now they're going to go for the Ash Blossom, which we knew they had. We're going to cross out the Ash though. He's going to try and attempt negating our cross out. We're going to stop the negate with the Griffin Rider going all the way up to Chain Link 6. Chain Link 6 then resolving in reverse, negating the Griffin Rider. Then we're going to go for cross out to negate the Ash Blossom. And just like that, we're able to stop his play for sure, but we are also running awful low on resources now. So we're able to summon out Stella and Ellis. The only problem is during the end phase, these monsters are going to get shuffled back into the deck. He bounces our Castapel back, and then he simply ends his turn. Very, very smart from our opponent. They now have an Omni Negate as well. Well, pretty much just an Omni Negate, but having Call by the Grave is not going to be doing us a lot of favors. Honestly, if Griffin Rider didn't... if he didn't destroy, we would have actually been in a really solid spot here. We decide, you know what, there's no possible way we're going to win this, and we decide to concede. That's the thing. The deck can run out of resources pretty quickly, and admittedly a large part of that was also bad plays on my part, right? I should not have lived in fear of the Nibiru. We had already committed to it, and we should have just played out the hand. So we should have. So admittedly that was my bad. That was a lesson. If nothing else, this is a lesson in not fearing Nibiru. Right? Either way, let's get into game number 4. Alrighty, getting into game 4. We're going second here, but we do have the Shifter at our disposal. Up against Tri-Brigades, that's a very solid play. Unfortunately, our opponent was ready. We're not going to see any Dimension Shifter sweeps in this video, unfortunately. Shifter getting banished and negated. Most of the time when you resolve Shifter, your opponent just surrenders, right? That's why we don't have any decent replays of us using it, because the moment you use it, they just scoop. We're going to negate the blue here. Usually if you can stop the blue preemptively, it sort of prevents them from getting their whole board going, although waiting on the Gigantic Sprite is also a good play. They are going to send their Vol here, and their Vol then is going to grab the Karas from their deck, adding it to their hand. They're now going to use Elf. Elf resummons the kit that they just sent to the grave, and they're going to use Kit's effect, banish one to summon out a Scarclaw Lightheart. Luckily, its effect only resolves if it's in the extra monster zone. They're going to go into Verasheet here, summoning out the Karas before linking off yet again into Berberum. That's going to trigger the Verasheet. They're going to basically mulligan a card before finally going off into their Gigantic Sprite, which I thought was very, very interesting. Luckily for us, the way in which Gigantic Sprite's effect resolves is atrocious, right? It's awful, which means that he doesn't even get the detaching material, which means no Berberum search, which means no nothing. GG's. And all we need is the Martha as well as any other spellcaster, basically, right? He does have the maximum C though. The max C is a bit of a problem. We're going to bring out our Martha. Martha's going to bring Ellis with it. It is a consecutive summon, so you only draw one card off of Martha's effect because they happen at the same time. Simultaneous summon is what I meant to say, sorry. We are going to go Castapel. We decide, you know what, we're going to see if we have lethal with this hand. I was still learning the deck at the time. I'm not sure if we do. We're going to go Ellis here. Ellis summoning itself out to the field. You know what, card advantage be damned. We're simply going to beat this man's ass. We're going to Exceed off now into Mikalis. Mikalis then is going to banish his Gigantic Sprite. The Berberum is going to trigger, grabbing him a Revolt. Revolt then shuffling a card back into the deck, which is just fine by me. We're going to go Mikalis, detaching one, grabbing our Exo-Sister Pax. We're going to use Pax, paying 800 to grab another Stella. Stella now can be normal summoned, and now we're going to use our remaining level 4s to go into Gibrian. Gibrian has the effect of boosting up our entire field by 800 attack points, and I don't know if anyone here is good at maths, but that's 33, that's 31, and that is 22. More than enough for lethal. And there you go, there is the Exo-Sister beatdown, stopping Tri-Brigade Sprite, which I believe is a tiered deck at the moment. I think it might actually be tier 2, maybe tier 3, I can't remember. But that's a hell of a deck at the minute, and our opponent wasn't in the most optimal of positions, of course. But again, that's just, it's one of the top decks in the game, you know? So what, we were able to beat Math Mechs, we were able to beat Sword Souls, we were able to beat Sprite Tri-Brigade. Like, it's just, whenever you're competing with this level of decks, whenever you're going against the best, now again, sure, it wasn't exactly the best showcase of each, but to be honest, the way this deck functions is it forces your opponent into positions where they're not in the best possible spot they could be. Like, that's the whole point of the deck. That's what it does. It forces your opponent into bad spots. Playing so many hand traps is just a part of the deck. You could look at it and say like, oh, well, you got lucky opening up a million hand traps. I'm like, no, I didn't get lucky. That's what the deck does. That's the purpose. That's by design. It's meant to do that. But anyway, we're going to get into the deck profile. We're going to talk about the deck and how it actually works, go over a couple of combos, and go over the full thing. So let's get into it. Exo-Sisters. This, I don't know. I actually think that this is up there with some of my favorite new cards. I think that this is a lot more fun than Sprite. I'm not going to lie. I like Sprite. I don't think Sprite's a problem. I think it's really fun. But I think Exo-Sisters actually like this more. I don't think it's more powerful, but I think it is definitely a contender for a top spot, and I think it's better than people give it credit for. And I think it's a lot more fun than things like Sprite as well. So let's talk about the deck. Of course, by designation, you can play a million hand traps in this deck, right? We decided to cut down on the number of hand traps we're playing to play extra things like Small World, because it sort of helps with the consistency a little bit. We were sort of struggling initially with trying to get Marfa every single game, but Small World, Prosperity, sort of fixes that. Stella sort of pseudo fixes it as well, which is why we're playing 3 of Stella. So this is the list we ended up settling on. The hand trap choices, I think a few of them are actually kind of key, so I'm going to involve everything off of the one profile this time. We're playing the Psy. We'll cover off the hand traps first so I can remove them from the list so you can just look at actual Exo-Sisters. We're playing the Gamma and the Driver. I think playing Gamma is almost necessary. You saw how often we were getting ashed on our Marfa. Because you're most likely going to be getting ashed on a Pax or a Marfa play, while that will inherently sort of mean you don't have any monsters in your field, right? Which means that your Gamma is alive for most of your starter plays, because they're either going to ash this or this, if they have it. So that means that Gamma is a lot more useful. It also protects your Max C, make sure your Max C resolves if you're going second, make sure your Shifter is more likely to resolve. So, I mean, Gamma, I think, is excellent in this deck. I hate playing the Brick. I hate playing the 1-to-2 ratio. I hate that this is limited to 2. If this card wasn't limited to 2, I wouldn't feel as bad about playing it. But it is, I think it's good enough to play, for sure, protecting your Marfa from Ash, absolutely. Then we've got some generic ones. We've got the double Veeler, double Max C, double Ash Blossom, double Ghost Bell. We've got the double Infinite Impermanence. We've got the double Called by the Grave and the Cross-Out Designator. So again, Called by the Grave, Cross-Out Designator, not only protecting you from Ash Blossom, but also this can be used to trigger off your Marfa's secondary effect, which we will get to in a moment. So there is, the Called by the Grave is definitely a necessary card. Got the double Dimension Shifter as well. So honestly, just a ton of absolutely great hand traps. You can play like different ratios. You can play 3 of your favorite hand traps if you don't want to play quite as many different ones as me. I like varying it because I hate drawing into multiple hard ones per turns. Like seeing 2 Ash Blossoms and 2 Maxis or 2 whatever's in your hand, 2 Dimension Shifters in your hand. It's not fun. So I try to vary it up as much as I can to make sure we're not hit with multiple hard ones per turns, right? But that's just me. You know, if you want to play 3 Maxi, you want to play 3 Ash, by all means, go for it. That's probably the better play, but I just like to keep it varied. So this is the actual meat of the deck, if you will. So there's 24 cards, and not even all of these are necessary. So you've got between 16 and 20 slots for you to just go nuts with, which is absolutely incredible. We're going to start with the actual Exo-Sister plays, beginning with Marfa. We keep referring to her so much, we keep talking about her. Why are we talking about her? Well, number one, this is your main starter. If you control no monsters, or if you only control Exceed monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand, as well as an Exo-Sister Ellis from your deck. So it's basically special summoning 2 monsters out to your field directly, and which is amazing, right? In an Exceed deck, summoning out 2 level 4s right away without even using your normal summon absolutely patches a massive hole that Exo-Sisters had. So this card, automatically incredible. Then the other Exo-Sisters, Ellis basically is a free special summon if you control another Exo-Sister, or she's here to be summoned off of Marfa's effect, so she's definitely a 3 of. We've got Stella's effect. You can play this at 2 or 3. Stella is one of the better ones, where if she's on your field, you can summon an Exo-Sister from your hand, which is pretty good. Then you've got Irene and Sophia. Irene will place an Exo-Sister card from your hand to the bottom of your deck to draw one, which is basically like a mulligan, basically just mulligan 1. So she's not really that impressive, but we do play her at 1. And then we've got Sophia, which you play at 2, which basically lets you draw a card if you control another Exo-Sister. So Sophia, definitely a really good card as well. You could almost argue putting this to 3, because just that extra draw 1 in a deck filled with so many hand traps, you could talk me into it. You absolutely could. So the rest of these guys, again, they don't do very much, right? So free special summon, another free special summon from hand, summoning another Exo-Sister. Irene mulligans 1, Sophia draws 1, and they all have a shared effect where if your opponent moves a card out of either graveyard, they can quick play Exceed summon into an Exo-Sister Exceed monster, which is absolutely incredible. So the moment your opponent moves anything out of the graveyards, you can start making plays. Marfa's is even better than that, because your Marfa, hers can activate no matter who moves the card out of the graveyard. So this card can quick play Exceed even if you move a card out of the grave, which is where your Call by the Grave comes in so handy. You can manually trigger Marfa, but for the rest of them, it needs to be your opponent that moves the card, which is still really good. Then we've got the Exo-Sister packs. Exo-Sister packs, basically you search your deck for an Exo-Sister card. Then if you grab the monster, you can special summon it if the Exo-Sister monster mentioned in its card text is either on your field or in your graveyard, which seems like a lot of words, but basically all of the Exo-Sisters mention another sister in their effect text. Where if you control them, typically you gain an extra 800 life points once you resolve their effects. So Stella, if you can, Ellis, if you control Stella, you gain 100 life. Stella, if you control Ellis, gain 800. And then Irene and Sophia are a pair if you control Sophia with Irene, or if you control Irene with Sophia. So they're basically paired up, and Marfa is also paired with Ellis. So if you basically have one Exo-Sister on your field or in your graveyard, then using packs, if you grab a monster that has the one that you already have in control in its text, you can special summon the monster you search. That wasn't explained very well. I'm going to go for that one last time. It's a weird effect to explain. So the monster you grab, if the monster listed in its text is already on your field or in your graveyard, you get to special summon it. Why was that so hard to say? I don't understand why that was so hard to say. It is 10 minutes to 9 in the morning. Cut me some slack. We're keeping that in, whatever. So that's how the Exo-Sister cards work. You've also got 2 trap cards. Varus will basically summon out 2 Exo-Sisters directly from your deck, as long as one mentions the other in its text. So for example, if you summon Sophia, then you're going to summon Irene. Typically that's the duo you go for. If you summon Stella, then you need to summon Ellis, and vice versa. So Varus will basically summon 2 out from your deck, but they are shuffled back into your deck during the end phase unless you manage to resolve their effects somehow. So this is kind of decent. It is rather situational. It's not like the best card in the world, but it's got its uses here and there. Then you've got Exo-Sister Returnia. So Returnia is definitely the one you go for. Returnia basically allows you to either banish one card and then a quick play Exceed summon, or if you've already Exceed summoned that turn, banish 2 cards, which is absolutely incredible considering that's exactly what you're going to be doing. You're going to be Exceed summoning before you even resolve this on your opponent's turn, which is insane. This gives you a basically banish 2 with 0 cost, which is incredible. It really is. You can even banish cards from the graveyard if you happen to control a Marfa if you want to trigger it, but this card is amazing. I would even, you could talk me into dropping Varus to play a second Returnia. You really could. This card is that good. It really is. And Varus is somewhat situational. So I think Returnia is absolutely broken. Absolutely. Then we've got Zoroa, the Magistus of Flame, which is Zoroa, the Magistus of Flame, which will basically give you just a bit of extension. When it's summoned, you can grab a Magistus monster from your extra deck, like the Moon Maiden, and equip it onto itself. Then you can special summon out a spellcaster from your hand or graveyard, so it gives you a bit of graveyard revival, which is handy. And secondary to that, while this card is treated as an equip card, you get to search your deck for your other Zoroa, which again, so you basically special summon one and then you plus one, which is pretty good. So it's a decent way to extend in your plays, especially if you get interrupted. You know, you will eventually at some point get hit with an Ash Blossom on your Marfa. Zoroa helps patch up the holes, if you will. So no, definitely a pretty decent card. And lastly then in the main deck, I meant to cut Infinite Permanence. Lastly then in the main deck, you've got Pot of Prosperity and Small World, both of which are used to grab your Marfa. Now, Small World doesn't have perfect synergy with every card in your deck. I believe it will not bridge from Gamma, Ash Blossom, and Ghost Bell into Marfa, but I believe everything else does. So Small World definitely a really, really good option, and then it even just helps you swap between your hand traps on demand, which is very handy as well. So Small World for sure an amazing card. And yeah, that's the main deck. Again, the main deck's really not all that complicated because most of the sisters don't really do much, I'm going to be honest. Not by themselves, but the Marfa being an enabler for the deck is absolutely phenomenal. And then all of the power from it comes from the extra deck, which is where the main meat of it is. But the main deck cards are all definitely self-sufficient enough. Decent-ish way of generating advantage. Not like tons of draw power, not tons of searching, but enough to make it viable, enough to give you follow-up, enough to make your combos consistent, so I can live with it. It definitely is pretty solid. Getting into the extra deck then, we're playing the 1 Cyframe Lord Omega just as our level 8 Exceed to summon off of Gamma and Driver if we happen to use it during our turn, because all of your Exo-Sister cards basically require you to control only Exo-Sisters. So if you activate Marfa, they then chain Ash Blossom. Well, you negate Ash Blossom off your Gamma, then you can Synchro Summon into Omega. Omega then will remove itself from the field while sniping a card out of your opponent's hand. So they go -1. That could be 1 less hand trap, 1 less interruption, 1 less starter, whatever. While you're also wiping out your own board, which means all of your Exo-Sister cards are live again, which is the main thing, right? This is why we play this guy over any other level 8. You can also summon it off of Zoroa, which is nice. I've not done it. I probably won't do it because it's not that strong of a play, but it is something to bear in mind. You know, it is a level 8, which means it can be summoned generically off of your Zoroa. We've got the UDR engine. Of course, we're summoning out a whole bunch of rank 4, so you might find yourself using Utopic Trico Future, although I've yet to use this card, and because the Exo-Sister package is just that strong. I've yet to use it. We have Exo-Sister Michalis. Michalis is definitely one of the more powerful cards in the extra deck. You're going to be using this card a lot. It's got a quick play banish on the turn it's summoned. So on the turn it's summoned, if it was summoned using an Exo-Sister, you can banish a card. Quick play without removing any sort of materials, which is really, really solid, especially considering you'll be summoning this during your opponent's turn and on your turn. So if you go second, it's really good for sniping a card. When you're going first, you're going to summon it during your opponent's turn, which gives you an extra banish. It also has the ability to detach a material to grab an Exo-Sister spell or trap directly from your deck to your hand. That is why you're able to grab your Eternia so consistently. So Michalis, phenomenal card, it really, really is. Then you've got Castapel. We're playing 2 copies of Castapel. You can get away with 1 if you don't really care about having the double, but I think having the double is great. On the turn it's summoned, neither player can summon from the graveyards, which is really, really good. For the rest of the turn anyway, and then you can detach a material to add an Exo-Sister monster from your deck to your hand. So normally whenever you're doing your plays, you're going to summon Castapel first to search for an extender, and then you're going to use that extender for Michalis, which is pretty solid. Then you've got Gibran, or Gibreen, or whatever her name is. If you control this card, it was Exceed summon using an Exo-Sister. You can target an effect monster your opponent controls and negate it, which basically gives you a quick play negate during your opponent's turn, or even during your turn. Which is fine, and it also has the ability to boost up the field by 800 attack points, which is a decent OTK enabler. But yeah, it acts as a negate plus a bunch of OTK power, which is pretty good. Play it as a one-off, definitely. Then we've got Asufiel. This one, again, one of the lesser used ones. If it's summoned using an Exo-Sister, Needleprey can activate card effects in the graveyard. So if you know your opponent's playing a really graveyard heavy strategy that uses a lot of effects in grave, this card becomes very valuable. You can detach a material from the card and target a card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. That effect isn't really as important as its first effect because, like I said, if your opponent is moving cards out of the graveyards, then you're able to quick play Exceed Summon using your Exo-Sisters, so you can basically shut down their entire strategy using this card, which is pretty solid. Then we've got the new boss monster, Exo-Sisters Magnifica. So this also helps patch a big hole in the deck where it wasn't all that great for pushing for lethal before. This card, 2800 attack, makes it the biggest Exo-Sister. You can also attack twice, which is surprisingly a big deal. Like, honestly, your deck doesn't really push for lethal that hard, so having a monster that is pretty damn big at 2800 attack that can attack twice, it's like, that's not a small effect, that's a pretty big deal. But its main effects are, of course, more devastating. Number one, you can quickly banish a card your opponent controls, right? Which is really good, of course. Doesn't target, which is solid. It gets past most protection effects, you know. Your opponent's trying to play DPE, your opponent's trying to play Avramax, your opponent's trying to play anything that like resists targeting or has an effect on destruction. This card outs it, which is phenomenal. Even like things like Dark Magician, right? Being able to banish their Eternal Soul even past a dragon, surprisingly comes up. Dark Magician is pretty popular right now. It then has a second effect where you can return one of its materials, one of its Exceed monster materials, attached to this card to the extra deck. Then you will Exceed summon that monster using this card as material. So if you think about it, it's like a tag out, right? So you're tagging one of its materials out, tagging this card out, sorry, into one of its materials, which will usually be Mikalis. So you're gonna basically return Mikalis from underneath the card back to the extra deck to then summon Mikalis using this card as material, which means you now have Mikalis's quick play banish effect, which means you've already banished one, now you can banish two. And now you have Exceed summoned this turn, which means your Returnia can now banish 2 cards, which is insane. That is 4 banishing during your opponent's turn. One of these targets, one of them doesn't, which is really solid as well. We've got Zeus, just for generic Zeus stuff. You don't have to play this. Again, I haven't summoned it. The deck itself has just been performing so well that I haven't needed it, but it is definitely a good option to have. And then we've got the double Artemis here, purely for our Zorora. It does nothing by itself. You never actually link summon it. And yeah, that is the full deck list. Again, the deck it's a lot of fun, to be honest. I'm going into the Exceed event soon on stream on Saturday. Be there if you want to be there. And we're going to be playing this deck. I don't know if it's like limited or changed or anything by the event. I'm trying to keep it all in suspense, if one will, until I actually play the event. But yeah, no, this deck is an absolute ton of fun. Let me bring up the full list again. Definitely, I think one of the more fun decks from the new pack, and one that I've been playing a lot. Spoilers. But no, absolute blast, really powerful, and really did surprise me. So that's pretty much everything. If you've gotten this far into the video and you haven't subscribed and haven't liked the video for whatever reason, I would recommend doing so, because obviously you like what you're seeing, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So I really would appreciate that. Any little bit of support does help us out massively. We're actually climbing in subscribers a lot quicker than I thought we would be, which I am so grateful for. At this rate, I'm pretty confident we could hit 2,500, maybe even 3,000 by the end of the year. And that's, I think, being conservative. I really think we can get this done. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. If you have any friends who watch Master Duel, if you have any relatives, whatever it is who are interested in Yu-Gi-Oh, any like communities, friend groups, discords, whatever, spread the word. Let them know we're here, we're waiting for them. We're doing as many profiles as we can. We're trying to get a video up every single day, at least one every single day. So again, it's something to stay tuned for, something to watch out for. And if you are already subscribed, then I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye bye.